Hello and welcome to Held in Our Hearts Baby Loss Podcast. We are an Edinburgh-based charity providing baby loss counselling and support for bereaved families. We are committed to ensuring that no family has to face their journey of loss alone, and we wanted to create this podcast to reach out and share stories, encouraging greater connection and understanding. Join us on our journey as we speak to a wide variety of guest speakers who have been personally affected by baby loss or who have been moved by it. Hello and welcome to our 8th podcast. My name is Nicola and today I had the great pleasure of talking with Jamie Cameron. Jamie's little girl Lyle died in 2019 when just 22 days old. Lyle is a twin and also has a big sister Cameron who was 5 at the time. The effect on them all has been huge, but Jamie has always been aware that she needs to support her daughter's grief as well as her own. Jamie and family and friends have set up a fund called Lyle's Light, and its main aim is to provide support to families who have siblings. Today, we talk about the books that families can be gifted to help explain grief and loss. We also talk about the complexities of supporting siblings on the journey after a precious and much-loved baby dies. As always, if you or anyone you know has been affected by baby loss, please reach out to us at www.heldinourhearts.org.uk or email us at info@heldinourhearts.org.uk. So, let me introduce you now to Jamie. So welcome to our podcast this morning. I'm absolutely delighted to have Jamie Cameron with us. Jamie has done a huge amount of work with the charity since the loss of her own daughter, and in particular focusing on siblings. So we've always known as a charity that some families sadly lose a baby and have other children, and indeed then maybe go on to have other children, not always, but siblings play a role in that grief, and Jamie is particularly interested in supporting those families. So thank you so much for coming on today, Jamie.
Thanks for having me, Nicola. I'm delighted to be here.
How are you this morning?
Yeah, I'm great. It's lovely and sunny here today, so I'm quite happy. How are you?
I know, sun's out. It's great. Yeah, it's always going to give us a wee boost for the day.
Absolutely.
So to kickstart, I suppose it would be really nice if you were able to tell us a little bit about your story and what's brought us to speaking to you today.
Sure. I guess it's where to start, really. Now I'm a mum of 4. I never actually thought I'd ever see that. Sounds like such a handful.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
It's a lot of small people. So I have an older daughter, Cameron, who's 7. And she's in primary 3. And then I had twins, twin girls, in August 2019, and I had a little boy about 6 months ago. So he's 6 months now. But the reason I guess I'm here today is yeah. Yeah, definitely. The reason I'm here today, I guess, is to talk about one of my twin daughters, Lyle. Or the reason why I'm here, I guess, because devastatingly, Lyle died when she was 22 days old from sudden and unexpected infant death. So yeah, that's why I'm here today. Unfortunately, I guess.
Yeah,
I wish it wasn't, but here we are.
It's like all our guests, isn't it? There's a reason that we're united and connected.
Mm-hmm.
It's through our loss, and I have to say, I felt really privileged that you've let me journey with you during that time, and we spoke so quickly after that time, didn't we? It felt like days after.
It was days. So Lyle died in the middle of the night, about 1 a.m. From Thursday into the Friday, on the 30th of August, and I think you and I spoke on the Sunday. So it was literally just 48 hours after she died. And I think I know that's quite unusual from speaking to you previously. I think it's quite unusual for parents to reach out so quickly. And I
Mm.
guess my motivation for doing that was really interestingly about my daughter, Cameron. Um, so
Mm.
Lyle was only 22 days old. And so was Alba, obviously, because they're twins. So Alba was quite oblivious to what had happened in any
Mm.
sort of obvious sense. I mean, I'm sure that she was picking up the vibes, um, but Cameron was only 5 when Lyle died, and I was wanting to sort of reach out to somebody who would know what they're talking about, really, because I was just so scared of saying or
Yeah.
doing something wrong for Cameron.
Mm. And actually, what is so different sometimes about speaking to everybody's stories is the complexities around that. So you had a baby, of course, when there's a twin that dies, you still have a baby to look after, but
Mm-hmm.
also another child who's sort of aware of your grief and is old enough to comprehend what's happened. Where some families we speak
Mm-hmm.
to, there might have been a very early loss.
Mm-hmm.
Or like, and so there maybe it's not even been a bump for the other child to be part of, or
Mm-hmm.
of course maybe the sibling is very young themselves, and so you had a daughter who, yeah, could understand that, the baby had died and it was going to affect her life, which I guess
Yeah.
is part of what we're going to talk about today.
Mm-hmm. And Lyle was home
And
as
how,
well. So Lyle,
I
you know,
guess,
yeah, sorry. So Lyle was at home when she died. So, there was no obvious sign that anything was wrong. So we all went to bed as normal on the Thursday night. Cameron got tucked in, got her story. There was no expectation that things were going to change in the middle of the night. So not only, I guess, for us did Cameron lose her sister, but she went through quite a traumatic journey that night. And then the preceding sort of 24, 48 hours, because Lyle died at home. And so there was that added complexity that Lyle was at home, she was with us, she was living and breathing and sort of doing as all babies do. And then Cameron got woken up at 5 in the morning and Lyle was dead. So there was that
oh,
sheer kind of boomf, life is different for her when it was completely normal in inverted commas before.
wow, yeah, I really hear that, like, for, I mean, for all of you, like, we've spoken about this before, that trauma and shock, but it's also a really little person who
Yeah.
is in the middle of that too, eh?
And she just
Gosh, it makes me
started
really sad
school.
thinking about that. Yeah, how can somebody
Yeah.
so little comprehend it? No adult can comprehend that, can they? But a wee person in the middle of that, what a shock. And looking to you, I would imagine, to
hmm
guide, because that's what children do, don't they? They look to their families to show them how to model what to do.
Well, that's it. I guess I was that, and I was very conscious of that I had to role model the way out of this, I guess, or I don't know if even that's the right term, but I guess it was role model how we as a family um, process and deal with this. And as I say, Cameron had just started primary one and she was literally in week 2. And our sister Alba had been quite poorly sort of day 10 after she was born and was in special care. So literally Cameron's first day of school was the day that Alba was admitted to special care. Um, so that wasn't like a normal few weeks beforehand. And starting school is such a huge, big thing for a child.
Of
And I wanted
course.
to support her as best I could in that journey that she was about to undertake, which is huge. And then also to sort of to be in special care with her twin sisters, and then obviously a couple of weeks later Lyle died. So you're so conscious that how I behave will dictate how she behaves in terms of moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's like a really important part to raise, isn't it? Is that nobody knows how to deal with this. Like, nobody, you don't grow up ever prepared for your baby to die, do you? So it's not a discussion that you have. It's not something that you think about. You know in your lifetime that if you're lucky enough that your parents will die while you're still here. There's something around that natural order. You hope that they'll be old, and you imagine that you'll have them all your life, and then they'll die. That's a growing up thing you interpret. But at no point do you ever think your baby will die. But then at no point do you look at your wee family and think, I might have to guide you through this.
Yeah, exactly.
And I might have to teach you this at such a young age that it's not always old people that die, but actually babies die. What an awful thing to have to endure, eh?
Exactly. And I think because I was pregnant with twins, and it's a sort of, I guess, more technically more of a high risk pregnancy, I always felt like the pregnancy element of it was the riskiest part, and getting them here safe. And then I think, so, Cameron knew that mummy was going for extra scans and things like that, because to keep the twins safe and to keep mummy safe. But so I guess I had prepared her for that element of it. But you never ever think in a month of Sundays that you're going to have to, that you would ever need to prepare your 5-year-old child that the fact that, once the babies are here, the peds say they're fine, you get home, you start to live your life as a family of 5, that you're then going to have to prepare them for the possibility that one day your baby sister might just not wake up. You would never dream of telling your child that. So
never. And I think
shock.
that's part of the complexity and heartbreak of the whole situation, isn't it? Is that we often forget, or maybe society often forgets, that it's not just the parents. It is a lifetime of change and a lifetime of grief and loss, really, and missing. And yes, life goes around that loss, and we can move forward, hopefully, into a happy future with family. But there's just somebody's always missing, and that includes a brother or a sister for people, isn't it? It's sort of an underlooked and often underspoken about area. And I wonder then if, I suppose you were saying about it was, you felt like it was your job to sort of almost navigate that journey for Cameron, and I don't know if you can even begin to tell us how you kind of did that, and maybe how she responded and how you managed through that.
Yeah. So I guess, and I think a lot of families who are listening to this will probably have the same feeling, that when you leave hospital without your precious baby, however your baby's died, there's not a lot of help from the hospital, I guess, as to how you approach your grief. You kind of just leave, and you maybe focus on the more practical elements of maybe organising a funeral and dealing with all the sort of administrative side of it. And I was really looking for some guidance from the meds, or the medics, or from anybody really who would say, like, okay, now your baby's died, here's how to try and like wade through the mud, like, 'cause I don't know about you, but I felt like my legs were literally lead, and it was like I couldn't have even lifted my foot off the ground with my arms to get to the next step. And so we're wading through treacle, and then you've got this 5-year-old who's just started school, who's bombing about, and children are they grieve so differently, I think, as well. So I guess for me, I wanted some advice as to how I talk about it, because I'm very open with Cameron, always have been, about life and how it works and how things are. And if she asks a question, I'll always try my best to answer it honestly and appropriately. And we've always had an open dialogue. So I guess initially it was trying to answer all her questions honestly, and try and also to protect her from what other people said. Because I remember somebody, and I don't know who it was, had said, "Oh, well, Lyle was too good for this earth, so, she was taken away." And children, obviously, they have a magical way of bringing it back to them. So Cameron's response to that was, "Well, what about me then? Am I not a good girl if I'm still alive, or is Alba not a good girl?" So it's trying to sort of navigate that and sort of say, no, that's not the case. Lyle died because Lyle stopped breathing. Lyle's body stopped working, so Lyle died. But she was as good as you, and you're as good as Lyle, and everyone in the house is equal. Regardless of whether they're alive or not. And it was really difficult to try and sort of, because they always do bring it to themselves, don't they? Cameron, bless her. the children are, I don't know, this is probably completely inappropriate to say, but I always think children are just little narcissists, because they've not learned patience, or,
Yeah.
they've not learned these skills yet. Their brains aren't able to sort of
Yeah.
function
Yeah.
on the level
The
that
whole
ours
world's
are yet.
them, isn't it? Yeah.
And rightly
Most
so.
important people are them. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course, of course. But
Mhm.
gosh, you've raised a really interesting point, haven't you? Around it's not. I hadn't thought of this before so much, but it's not around just what language we use. It's
Mhm.
external, isn't it? And like,
Yep.
so my son was only just 2 when Theo died, so I feel it was slightly different, and maybe as we continue to talk, it will become, those differences. But um, I do remember he once, so we talk about heaven, and he
Mhm.
knows what heaven looks like, and we were quite confident that we could try and explain what we felt heaven was, and to try and explain to him. This is when he was getting a bit older, that well, we can make heaven whatever we want to be, because nobody can challenge those thoughts. And then I
Exactly.
remember he
Yeah.
was really little, but he came in the shower one day and he just said to me, so is Theo will he always be with Kevin? And I was like, Kevin? And
Who's
he's
Kevin?
like, yeah, it's like a Kevin heaven. And I was like, I came down the stairs to my husband saying, I think the whole time he thinks that Theo has actually been with someone called Kevin, because we've been talking about heaven. And it's like those moments, isn't it, that you go,
Uh-huh.
oh, right, okay, yeah, your interpretation is very different. And like you say, somebody saying something makes them think of something totally different from what you intended it to
Uh-huh.
be.
Yeah. That's
So
it.
yeah, very
Um,
interesting.
it's kind of trying to translate it, isn't it, into a language that they understand. And I guess for me, it was just when Cameron asked a question, I was just, say to her, I tried to keep it factual, because that's what she was interested in initially. I think it
Mm,
was like, right, so Lyle went to bed and what happened? And then, we woke up
mm,
and what happened? And we went through that quite a lot. And then it was kind of, I think then she had that kind of like, oh, right, she's not coming back. This is
mm,
pretty big. And they had a nice relationship, Cameron and Lyle, even though she was only here for sort of 22 days. Um, I used to talk Lyle. So Lyle would say really funny things. I'd give her a voice and she'd sing a song, and Cameron would say like, "Oh, we're not going to hear." Cameron at the time, it sounds ridiculous actually, was like really into making potions. Little girls like to make potions with bubbles, and so she'd make potions in the
yeah.
bath. And Lyle was quite a demanding baby in comparison to Alba, and she screamed blue murder quite regularly. So like Cameron would get quite annoyed at this. So I'd talk Lyle to make Cameron like her. Um, and Lyle would always. So I made up a song. It was called "Potion in My Pants." So for whenever she did a poo, Lyle would sing this song, which sounds completely ridiculous. And Cameron would sort of say, "Oh, we're never going to hear that song again." Lyle's never, and it was the realization really that her sister isn't coming back, and she's so even now we still sing the "Potion in Your
Mm.
Pants" song, just to sort of bring Lyle
Oh,
back a wee bit. And Lyle
yeah.
would say to her like, Cameron, what's your favorite animal? And Cameron would say, I don't know, dog or something like that. And Lyle would say, well, mine's is a pink unicorn. Just being totally wild and out there. And Cameron will still say,
Oh,
well, Lyle's first favorite animal was a unicorn. And so, it's guiding them through all this.
well,
And it's
mm,
funny, like, but trying to behave normally for them, because she needed that normality. She needed mummy to function normally. And I say normal in like the loosest sense, be up, be washed. I made sure like
mm.
I put penciled in my eyebrows, you know, because initially the first couple of days after Lyle died, Cameron would say, Mummy, where did your eyebrows go? And I'd be like, oh God, are they really that bad? Um so,
Isn't it the
I
funniest
needed to.
things, because you're trying to
Mhm,
be mum to your daughter, yeah,
mhm.
and sometimes it's not the obvious things we think of as mum. It's like if the things that you traditionally do go,
Mhm,
that can be more unsettling, isn't it? Isn't
mhm,
that strange that you're there and present, but
mhm.
actually they don't want all the other bits to go either. And if all the
No.
other bits are every morning you'd make this for breakfast, or
Mhm.
every morning you sing a song or do a
You
routine,
look
and you
like
can't do
this.
that, then their world is like, whoa, what's happened? And your
Mhm.
eyebrows change and they're like, that doesn't feel the same to me.
No. And
Yes.
you wouldn't think it's important, but so I tried my best. And for example, like I usually do my hair. My hair is really quite it's a victim of the 90s, shall we say, and the poor straighteners and things. So I have to kind of style it now, as are my eyebrows, actually, I have to say. And and so
90s.
oh dear, overplucking. Anyway, so I had to sort of make sure my hair was straightened, and I had sort of the makeup that I would normally wear on, because I needed to look like mummy as well as be like mummy, and that was important to her, and I'm sure it's probably not an uncommon thing, and I guess it was probably good
Especially
for
when a
me,
child's a bit
actually.
older, I think, eh?
Yeah,
Because
good for
they
me.
know more of your routines, don't they? Yeah, when they're older. When they're really little, it's a bit more chaotic in some respects, isn't it? When you've got a
Yeah.
baby, another surviving sibling under 2, for example, or
Mm-hmm.
3. But I think as they grow, they very much know these are my routines. This is what normally happens. So I can hear that you had to, in the middle of such pain and loss and shock, have to try and still present as mummy to Cameron,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Absolutely.
really important to keep other things almost right for her, eh?
Mm-hmm. And you kind of don't want to look the same because you don't feel the same. So for me, I can. Why would I pencil in my eyebrows? I don't want to look like the person who I looked like 2 days ago, whose baby was alive, and you were and you were happy. Your world wasn't smashed to smithereens. So I guess, like, why would I want to do that now? Because I don't feel like that. So I feel like absolute rubbish. So let's look like
Mm,
rubbish, because why? What does it matter?
mm, mm,
And that's how I felt. But I guess actually it was probably quite a good thing for me to, like, get up and get washed, and to straighten my hair, and to put my makeup on to a certain extent, because then I guess it forced you to face life again, and
mm,
normality, and made me kind of think, right, okay, she needs a normal. It won't be the same normal that we had before,
mhm,
but it will be a normal, and I need
mm.
to be that for her, and our dad too. And poor Stephen. I guess my partner, um, we obviously, Lyle's death was unexpected, so the sheer trauma of that was quite debilitating for him for a couple of days, and and how do you deal with that? And I remember him, sort of, I guess, sitting on the sofa, just pretty comatose, actually, and quite rightly
Mm.
so, because why wouldn't you sit on the sofa being completely like earth, like you're
Absolutely.
shattered, your life is shattered, and having to say to him,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can't sit like this, because we need to. For Cameron's getting freaked out, we need to try
Mm,
and be a function, and and poor Stephen had to go, yeah, you're right, like, but he didn't, and I think to myself, like, and that was an awful conversation for us to have, for me to say, like, come on, we can't do that, because
yeah,
Cameron can't have it. And that's a really hard thing to pick yourself
yeah,
up and go, right, yeah, we can't do that. And I always feel really guilty about that for Stephen as well, because I think, did I sort of intrude on his way of grieving, but
mm.
he did.
I can really
He
hear the
rallied round
pressures on
completely.
you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can hear,
Um,
there was somebody who was in that home. There was a baby who, like you say, you probably less concerned around little Alba and how she was emotionally feeling, even though we
ah,
don't know what she was actually emotionally feeling. But I can see how
yeah.
having another child or children puts pressure. In some respects, they can be helpful pressures, can't they? Like I remember my son he needed fed, he needed
Yeah.
milk. He
Hmm.
would, like, toddle through in the morning in a little sleep suit and say milk at the side of my
Hmm.
bed, and I'd open my eyes and just not want to be here because my
Hmm.
son had died. But there was another person in front of me saying, my needs need to be met too.
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and I remember when we first spoke, Jamie, we talked around some things I did with my children and have done when they were little, was to read sort of books around
Hmm.
practical, like about the body. And I think we spoke about that. I had a pop-up book, and I think I
Yeah.
said to you that, like, we'd read about, like, the heart and what all the bits of the body do. Because for me, initially, I had to, like you touched on earlier, I had to explain maybe what death was,
Hmm.
which is horrendous, having to do that to a small child. Like, whoever wants to sit and talk about that? But it feels like maybe then for me it was easier because the emotion was away in some respects. I was reading
a book. It was
Yeah.
pop-up, so it felt a bit more fun and age appropriate. And
Yeah.
then I would then maybe touch on saying, well, when your heart stops, like it means that you can't live without a beating heart. And that felt like the only thing I could do at the time to try and explain any more around that.
Yeah, and I think it's something practical, isn't it? So like books are a big part of my family. I love reading. Cameron loves reading. We have always done bedtime stories. And like you said, I guess death is such a huge concept, isn't it? It's like, it's really, really hard to I don't know, like vocalize what it is, explain it. How do you go about saying like what death is to a 5-year-old or to a 2-year-old? So for me, I wanted to try and find a way to explain what had happened, and I guess we didn't know what had happened either, and I'm sure that's quite common with a lot of families who are involved with Held in Their Hearts, that you just don't know the answers, and children want answers, particularly 5-year-olds and that kind of age group, that initial school age. They want explanations, and they're used to their parents being able to give them explanations. So why does Cameron's particular why child, why is this, why is that, why is it, why would this do this, and you're trying to explain things, but so why did Lyle die, and you have to say, well, I don't know, but what I can tell you is, like you say, that she stopped breathing, and you need your lungs to breathe, and you need your heart to beat so that you can breathe, and it's going through that. So I found books really, really helpful. And actually Cameron's not Cameron's from my first marriage, and when me and her dad separated, I used books then to explain what had happened. Why mummy and daddy weren't living in the same house and that type of thing. So to me, it was kind of like a natural progression to use books to explain to Lyle about Lyle and what had happened.
Yeah, I totally remember that, us really having a good discussion around that. And am I right in thinking that the school were also involved with books?
So I had the book that I used when Cameron's dad and I separated was The Invisible String. And it's all about how even when you're not with people, you're still connected by love. So that because what I was trying to do was really prepare her in case that she ever wanted to go and have sleepovers at her dad's house. So it was that way where, even though you're with daddy, Daddy Gordon, your love is still with mummy, and if you need me, then the whole thing is you tug on your invisible string and I feel it, and then I tug back and you feel it in your heart. So that's kind of what the book's about. So when Lyle died, that was the book I turned to explain, not so much to explain the sort of physiological reasons why Lyle had died, but to help us with that connection to Lyle, and that really helped her. So I had mentioned it to the school, and Cameron's school are absolutely fantastic. They didn't really know us particularly well because Cameron was only in like week 2 of primary 1, but they were absolutely fantastic and incredibly supportive, and I'll be forever grateful to them for that. And I had sort of explained to the school that I was using this book, so they then ordered copies of the book as well, and read it with Cameron, and they actually did a whole primary 1 topic surrounding this book and the whole of primary 1. So it wasn't just Cameron, they involved everybody, and they all did their sort of balloons to their invisible strings, to who was important to them and who was in their family, and it was, so she didn't feel like the only person, because I think Cameron felt when Lyle died that she was the only sibling that had ever happened to. And so a lot of my journey as well with Cameron was we met some other bereaved mums and bereaved siblings round about her age who are local to us, and Cameron was really glad to sort of meet another girl whose sister had sadly died as well as a baby, and that really helped her. But to do that topic with all of her class meant that she realised actually that some people had grannies who died, some people, she had friends whose mummy had really sadly passed away. So she's like, I'm not the only one, and she knows how I feel, and they understand because they've had a similar experience, and that really helped her, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, what you've done is, validated what she was feeling through her peers, essentially. And what an
Yep.
incredible school. You know, as a primary teacher before, and I never shied away from difficult conversations and loved having, you know, that kind of emotional discussions in classrooms, regardless of children's age, because it's life, isn't it? Life isn't always how we want it to go. And I think
No.
we have a duty as educators to hold those conversations and to encourage the openness of others. And how amazing that they could do that in primary one, and how special for everybody, because everybody's touched by somebody, whether, like you say, it's not always loss as in death, but you know, it might be a pet that they had, or it might be somebody
Yeah,
they don't see very much now because they moved away. So
absolutely.
loss comes in many different shape and forms for kids. So the fact that they could do that in the class would not only help everybody feel connected, but absolutely for little Cameron feeling that, okay, maybe I'm not on my own. Maybe my situation is very unique, and maybe nobody else can directly always understand this, but other people have lost people they love, and you're encouraging, of course, through the book. It's about that connection. So that connection that yes, it's physically the end of seeing that person, but it's not the end of love, is it?
No.
The love and the connection can continue to grow. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, like since that time, all the ways that you've maybe encouraged Cameron to connect with her sister. So whether it's at Christmas or anniversaries, or just in general, like how she's spoken about and in your lives.
Yeah, it's Lyle's all, you know, I'm very conscious that I have, well, now four children, and even with the twins, I always wanted them to feel like they were their own person. You know, I was quite conscious of that as a twin mum, that I didn't want them to be lumped together as twins. I wanted them to be Lyle and Alba and to have their their own identities. So, you know, I felt quite strongly that that's how I wanted to approach it. So I'm always really conscious now that they're all kind of equal, I guess. I think equality in the true sense is something that I feel quite strongly about for my kids. So I find it that it's a really hard balance to strike, isn't it? Because I guess you want your children, your existing children, to know about their sibling who died and to feel that connection and the love for their sibling, but also not to be overshadowed by the sibling who's deceased, because I don't want to focus everything on Lyle and them feel that I perhaps maybe focus too much on Lyle and not about them. So it's finding that balance, isn't it, between, and you'll know that yourself, it's like, you know, talking about the sibling and keeping the sibling's memory alive without overshadowing your surviving children. So we do quite a few different bits and pieces. Sorry, I'll let you. What were you?
I was just going to say, I know if when you put like a somebody that's died, or on a pedestal almost, sometimes I've read about that, where it's like because they're untouchable, and so they're always spoken about, and like you say, it's like there's a fine balance, isn't there, of getting that right, and there isn't a right and wrong way of doing that, of course, but
no, there's no.
Yeah, how have you navigated that then?
So we have pictures of Lyle about the house, but I try and make sure that there's not more pictures of Lyle than there are of the girls and little Blair. You know, I try and make it even, and I've tried to avoid having like a display, I guess, for Lyle specifically. So, you know, all of our memory making bits and pieces are scattered around the house, kind of in random places, just like the kids' toys and things, you know, and bits and pieces like medals that Cameron's had for ice skating, or, you know, Alba's bits and pieces, her colouring in from nursery and things. And, you know, so I try and make sure that we've kind of spread it about a bit, so that we don't have, I guess, I don't want to use this word, but a sort of, and there's nothing wrong with this if people do have that, but I didn't personally want like a shrine to Lyle, you know, but so I'm trying to do that so that, because then again, Cameron, I know, because she's so quick that she would say, well, where's my shelf then? You know, like, where's Alba's shelf? Where's Blair's shelf? You know, if Lyle's got a shelf, why don't I have one? So trying to kind of incorporate all of them all the time. And we have things for Lyle for the Christmas tree, but every year they all get one.
So is it a new thing each year that everybody gets?
Yeah,
including Lyle?
Everyone gets a bauble, including Lyle. And that way they can't say, oh, well, Lyle's got more bubbles on the tree than me, and and not that they would in a way that is sort of selfish or intending to be hurtful, but that's, again, like I said, that's just how they think. Like yesterday my dad got Cameron a bum bag. She really wanted a bum bag. Why, I have absolutely no idea.
Back to the 90s.
Yep, I know, it's coming back. And Dad gave Cameron this bum bag, and Alba, she's just 2 now, and she was like, Alba bag, where's Alba bag? And my dad was like, oh no, like, because before she's never noticed, but now she's like, hey, if she's getting a bag, I need a bag. My dad's like,
I mean, it all makes sense, doesn't it? Same in grief. It's like, let's all be equal here. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it?
So they're exactly the same with Lyle, so if she's getting something, then I want one too. So I try and make sure everything's equal, and just to weave Lyle in, because Alba, obviously, she's 2 now, and I'll say to her, you're Alba was born at the same time as Lyle, and Lyle's Alba's sister, but Lyle's not here anymore, and Alba sort of doesn't really say too much about it, and that's quite a hard thing, because it's, how do you introduce a child who Alba has met but has no memory of, or no real, probably obvious connection to.
So yes, because I've had that, because obviously Theo was in the middle, the same as you have had, where they died and they were connected to that living child, but also that someone came after, and that after person had to know that there was somebody before them, but they're not here. And I think from certainly watching Oscar's journey, it was around photographs, and then like a birthday cake for Theo, and he doesn't know who we're singing happy birthday to initially, and he doesn't know why we're blowing out like 4 candles or 5 candles, but eventually he catches up, and now he does talk about it, and he's like, so my brother would be, and I think it's their own individual journeys, but it's a different thing, isn't it, when they are born and you have to wait until they're developmentally almost ready to start to ask some questions. Where for Cameron, she was asking questions right from the second that happened in her life. So it's a totally different journey, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's having that. I guess we've got 3 in our house, because you've got like Cameron, who was there and has memories of both Lyle and the night that Lyle died, and then the period after. And then we've got Alba, who was there but who survived where Lyle didn't. And then you've got Blair, who has never met Lyle, and who is going to have a sister he has never met, and he came after. So we've got the 3 in our house, and I guess time will tell as to how to approach that. But like you say, it's having the photographs in the house so that she's just there, and I'm hoping, and the basically plans and all that, like Lyle will just be somebody who they are aware of, and it's not like a shock to them, because the fact that Lyle was here and now is not here is just fact for them, I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's maybe too simplistic of you.
Well, I think you want your children to live along with it as you do. So you want to be able to say their name. Like I could just say something. Say, for example, if Theo would have started high school this year.
Yeah.
So in the house, I can just say to the children, oh, do you know Theo would have started school today? And nobody goes, like, or what? Or hears Theo's name and thinks, did you just mention Theo? It's like really natural, really normal, sitting at the dinner table, and they're like, gosh, like, and then Oscar might bring something else chat in, but Lucas, who's 14, almost 15, is going to think about that differently, because he's moving into a young adult now, and he absolutely knows that is something else now. You can see that, like, it's a harder conversation to have now with him. It's interesting as he's older, because he does really know what death means. Where before it's like you say, a simplistic way. But I think my experience is journeying with them as they developmentally reach different milestones. So developmentally, all children will go through that whole like life, death, like animals dying, people dying. Like, what does that mean? Because all of a sudden their world's not about them. And I think sometimes bereaved parents can feel like they've done something wrong at that stage because they're fixated on death. They keep talking about the baby that died. But I think it's a normal development too for children, all children. And then as they get older, I think they move into a sort of real reality, don't they? But I think what you've just described is that if Lyle is around in your family and she is known and loved and remembered, then at any point in your life, at any point of that journey, when she's mentioned, everybody just goes with that chat because she is as spoken about as anybody else is.
Yeah.
So I think that's what, or like you say, we'll never know what a good job we've done or not until our children are adults, probably. But the hope is, like you've just, the conversation we've just had this morning, that we are doing our best to make the conversation open. It's not hidden. It's not something not to be discussed. In the old days, there was like many people find death certificates of siblings and we're like, who was this person? My mum or dad's died and I found a death certificate. I used to hear that lots. But of course we've moved on from that now, haven't we? So
that's it. And I guess
and I know that you've done
I think my grandfather, one of his siblings or two of his siblings, I think, had passed away. But we didn't really know how or why or what happened or who they were or what their name was or anything like that. Because it just wasn't spoken about. And I guess like many families in a street would have lost a baby, 80, 90, 100 years ago, whereas now it's less common, thankfully. But, I would quite like it if perhaps, when my grandchildren are, I'm looking after my grandchildren, that they will know who Lyle is and that, it's not a case of like, of it just being Cameron, Alba and Blair. I'd like Lyle to be known too, but whether that happens or not, I guess, is up to us and how we approach that. And like you say, so it's not taboo, it's not a difficult subject for them to raise or ask questions about.
How wonderful to think that one day, that's right, that you have grandchildren and other extended family members, and Lyle's name is mentioned just as equally as anybody else. And actually, I'm further on. I'm 12 years bereaved. You can say that, Theo, with a smile, like when you can be spoken about, even have a bit of a warmth around it all. Where I know at the beginning that's very difficult to do. It's like almost, I remember, it's like you're trying because you're going, doesn't feel easy at all, but I want to remember this way, but it's still painful. But as time moves on, the pain lessens, and so what you can do is remember in a warm way. And how lovely to pass that love down, because there's somebody always loved, always, like the love doesn't change. And if anything, I have to say, I sometimes think it just grows and grows because it gets easier to live with. Therefore, it gets easier to speak about, maybe. And
I think there's more space.
I know
for
that you've done. Yes, true. And I know you've done a lot of work around the sibling books. I wonder if you can tell us about that, because this is like a wonderful gift from Lyle, I guess. The project that you've developed.
I think so. Like I said before, we read a lot about we used books as a tool to discuss things with Cameron, and we I sort of set out to try and find more books in addition to The Invisible String that would maybe help me explain what had happened and talk about it, I guess, in a way, because initially when we spoke about Lyle, it was very hard to speak about it without me sort of just being in complete floods of tears. So to read a book, to sit down and read a book, was a way to do it that was slightly detached from the emotional sort of chat, I guess. So like, me not having to say, go over it over Lyle's loss again and how she died and what happened, and so it was using someone else's words, which felt easier to do. And it had that sense of slight detachment from the enormity of what had happened for me. So I set out trying to find some books, and initially kind of went online and tried to find some books, but a lot of them were about the loss of older people, and it was kind of like, well, they got old and then it was maybe a fox or a badger, and I mean they were still really good, but the fox got really old, so he went into the woods and he fell asleep and died, and Cameron would say, well, but Lyle wasn't really old, so why did she die? And it was like trying to find a way to do it that that helped me explain it to her without me breaking down and to floods of tears and to sort of feel really emotionally raw afterwards, because I went I guess went through a period where I couldn't go there. I couldn't engage with the enormity of the emotions, so I had to just kind of shut it down almost, and focus on the other bits. So I found some other books, and they really helped us. So then I sort of simultaneously felt like I really needed to do something. I had all this quite a sort of angsty person, and Stephen would be, yep, absolutely. You know, I have a lot of sort of energy, anxious energy. I always have done, and it kind of got worse after Lyle died, I would say. And I think because I felt like I was supposed to be looking after twins, and the one difficult thing for me after Lyle died was how easy it was to leave the house, because see, trying to leave the house with baby twins and a 5-year-old is a real challenge, shall we say. So, and then, you know, when I was taking Cameron to school after Lyle died, I used to just put Alba on a car seat and me and Cameron and Alba would go out, and it was like easy. So I had all this sort of energy floating about that I would have used looking after twins that I wanted to kind of get out. So I started trying to fundraise, and we sort of initially we did, it was actually the first baby loss awareness week, because it was only about 5 or 6 weeks after Lyle died. We did the 15 for 15, and had like a phenomenal response from friends and family and even people we didn't know. And I think we raised about £6,000 in a week. It was incredible.
Wow.
Because I know it was huge. I was so touched by people's sort of kindness. We didn't announce that Lila died on social media. I couldn't do anything, you know. I didn't tell, you know, we told people who had to be told, but I couldn't post anything about it. So I think nobody really knew that she died. And I think when people seen the post on our My Just Giving page, I think people were completely overwhelmed about what happened. So we raised a lot of money, and then just kept going, really. And it made me feel better, selfishly.
And how much have you raised roughly altogether now?
I'm not entirely sure now, but I think we may be talking about £22,000-23,000 in the last few years.
It's just huge. Unbelievable, isn't it?
It's massive. Yeah. So buy quite a lot of books, I have to say. So that was the first project, wasn't it? Really.
Yeah. And we have some books now, don't we? And they're a gift, essentially, aren't they, from your daughter to others, and from your family to others, and
from us.
And we have a little card that you wrote, isn't it?
And so we give books now to families who would like them. Anybody who needs a book or a couple of books, then we use some of the money that we've raised, and we started a little fund called Lyle's Light, and that provides books for bereaved siblings of any age, in any location, who approach the charity. We've got about 5 or 6 different books by a couple of different authors that explain quite a wide range of topics, because Held in Our Hearts, you know, it looks after so many families in so many different circumstances that we didn't want it to be prescriptive. So a couple of the books are called the Loss books, and they kind of cover all about your baby brother or sister dying, or your twin sister dying. We have a specific book that's all about your twin and how you grow with your twin. But we also have a book that's called These Precious Little People by an author called Frankie Bruner, and she lost her first daughter, her eldest daughter. She was stillborn, and that's all about babies, you know, and how they grow, and then how sometimes either while they're growing or after they're born, they pass away. And it's a really good book to explain to children you know, how the journey of pregnancy and bringing a baby to life doesn't always go to plan, I guess is probably how I would describe it. And so they're gifted to families, and I've got a little card that goes in it just to explain to people that, like, I get how you feel, and I get how you're in this quagmire of loss and grief, and how, you know, I hope that this might just, you know, books aren't, you know, they're not going to solve all your problems, but they might just make your journey that tiny bit easier, I guess, because, you know, some people might think, well, what does a book do? But, you know, it might just help that little bit. And it's not about solving the world's problems, but it's just about making that tiny little bit of journey a little bit easier.
And the books are just, I mean, such a special addition that we can give to families. So we have many parents talk to us around that, like, how am I meant to speak to my other children? And it's been such a lovely gift for us to give on behalf of Lyle's Light. Is to package up some books and get the right ones for them, or they might order them all, and they're of course free because of your incredible fundraising efforts, and just lovely to be able to do that for families. And we will be sharing that today, sharing the page that families can go on and order those, and we'll get them posted out to them. So it's an opportunity again for me just to thank you for coming on today, being so open. It takes such courage to just talk so openly. It's such a privilege for me to journey with you, but it's just such a privilege. Oh, thank you for you to have given so much back to the charity, and in turn that then of course is to other families, which is where your passion lies, is that that feeling and you've endured that loss, and you want to help however you can, which is the same ethos and values as we hold. And to wrap up today, we ask all our guests the same question, and just wondering if you could tell us about something that you're grateful for today, Jamie.
Not just today, but always. I have to say, it's my wee mum and dad. I'm very grateful to them. I don't know where I would be without them. I'm so lucky to have them.
Mm-hmm. That brings a real tear to my eye.
I know, it's going to make me cry.
Dads are incredible.
So well, Nicola. I've done so well.
We did. We held ourselves together pretty good there, but goodness, it just touches right. It's like right at the heart, doesn't it? It's a blow, because those. I know the love from your mum and dad and all they do for you. So actually, in turn, you can help ourselves in the charity, but even this morning being on this call. So let's all be grateful for your mum and dad today. I hope that they listen to this and know that how loved they are by many.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing so much about your journey and all the work you're doing for siblings. I know many people will listen to this today and get a lot of comfort, and also maybe go and look at our books on our website. So thank you so much, Jamie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks again to Jamie for talking to us today and sharing her precious daughter Lyle with us, telling us about her journey with her family since Lyle sadly died. What a true inspiration Jamie is, raising so much money to help support other bereaved families. Lyle's light certainly shines bright. Please remember we're here to support you, and we understand. Please visit www.heldinourhearts.org.uk or email info@heldinourhearts.org.uk. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram.